Hello, I'm Leroy Garcia, and this is Blue Rain Gallery Podcast. Today in the studio, we have with us a very wonderful person, longtime friend, longtime collector, art appreciator, and an artist himself. Marshall Hunt, welcome.
Thank you, Leroy.
Thank you for coming today, and we have some things to talk about. And one of the things that I've tried to do recently, after interviewing tons of artists and how their careers go, I've been trying to get collectors in here, special collectors that have a very passionate view of collecting art and what art is. And we've had also a long time journey with these collectors. And last week we did a couple of collectors from Michigan and San Diego. And today, Marshall is from Las Vegas, Dallas, and Santa Fe, I guess you could say, no?
Originally from Oklahoma.
Oh, originally from Oklahoma. So let's start with a little bit of your history. Before we started this recording, we were talking a little bit about Marshall's roots. And Marshall has been on a journey, but he's reached back to his past and discovered his heritage. And so let's talk a little bit about your heritage as we just discussed, but go ahead and review this for our people that are watching.
Well, I was born in Oklahoma, 1957.
Nice.
It was a great year. My mother is Seminole Indian, and my father was German and Scotch-Irish. And we lived in Ardmore, Oklahoma, is where I grew up. My mother and her whole family is from Seminole County, Maud, Oklahoma. And we grew up not as a lot about our native culture that I have now discovered about. When my mother was growing up, she was taught to be ashamed to be Indian.
Mm-hmm.
And so she tried to fit in, but as she was taught. And so it took us both a long time to kind of start to connect and for her to share her story with me, mm-hmm. and for me to really go out and discover my family and our roots and for the internet and the fact that we were given a roll number. All our family at the time was given roll numbers back in the late 1800s under the Dawes rolls. And so through that and the internet, I was able to go back and really rebuild an entire history from 1838 when my grandfather was captured during the Second Seminole War and put on steamers and brought to Indian Territory, later to fight in the Civil War. And I discovered all this and more. We could spend hours talking about what I've learned.
Yeah.
And so I like to tell people that's, I may not be 100% native, but I have 100% native soul. I've discovered that.
I agree with that. I see that in you, and in fact, watching you over the years, as you've discovered more and more about yourself, and it's been nice to see.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah,
it's been a great journey, actually.
Yeah, I don't remember what year I met you. It must have been around 2004, 2005.
2005.
2005. Peter Stessel, who was a director here, came to me and was like, "Hey, there's this guy. He's from Las Vegas, and he's interested in some Tammy Garcia stuff." And that's the first time I met Marshall. So I went over there, shook his hand, and he's all, "Leroy, I'm gonna take these 2 sculptures, but they need to be stamped number 7." I'm like, "What?" He's all, "Yeah, lucky number 7." So along that started our adventure kind of together here, and Marshall has been such a great supporter of the Native American art community since, and hardcore, and very appreciative of that. Marshall, what do you do as far as your career?
My career is really the last 39 years is I've been in the electrical wholesale and lighting business. And that's really I grew up in a slaughterhouse in Oklahoma, grinding hamburger at 6 and salt and hides, with my
gosh.
brother. And so 2 weeks out of high school, I caught a ride with a guy going to California who dropped me off in Las Vegas, and been there ever since, and that was in 1975. And so I started out as an apprentice meat cutter because I didn't really know anything else. And wound up in business with a couple of guys and owned a meat market a retail meat market, did some wholesale stuff for about 4 years and left there and went to work for my best friend at the time's dad, basically starting over, working in the warehouse. He was a lighting supply company. And then a year and a half later, we all left, his brother and sister and the mother, and we opened a company called Nedco Supply, which his dad founded. And we've been there ever since. And that was 1982.
And away you went.
And away we went.
So if anybody comes to Blue Rain Gallery, you can look up at the lights, and those are all provided by Nedco.
Well, thank you for the business.
Oh, you're welcome. You're welcome. So tell me about your collecting journey. What do you like to collect? Who's your favorite artist? Things of that nature.
So I really started collecting probably in the early 80s. Prints, I couldn't afford much, but prints were always a good starting point. I bought my first Kachina in Flagstaff, actually, and that was probably in 80, 81. That's probably my first piece of original art.
Oh, nice.
And a friend of mine introduced me to Gallup ceremonials. He took me out, and
that was probably in the heyday of Gallup ceremonials.
It was great.
Right?
It was. They had the big parade, which had probably at the time 30 or 40 Navajo code talkers in the parade.
Oh, nice.
And as we all know, that has come
pretty much
to an end.
Gone.
And but it was a very proud moment for me. And that kind of was, I've always been proud of my heritage, but that actually took me to a new level, being around all of that and going out and seeing all the art and seeing the code talkers, really, which is, they're everybody's hero if you're Native. That whole story is it's one of our great stories.
I think even R.C. Gorman's dad was a code talker.
Yeah, Natives have many.
Yeah.
Glorious stories, but that is one that I'm very proud of.
Yeah.
So that started my journey. He introduced me to green chili at Gennaro's.
Oh, man, it started an addiction. Probably.
I think it's either on 7th Street or 4th Street, and I know just where it's at. I can find it every time. And then I made my way to Santa Fe. I've also hunted all over New Mexico, from Cimarron to Eagle's Nest and Angel Fire, and so it's just a magical place, and so we wound up here, me and my wife Leanne, in 2004 to pick up an original commission I had done with J.D. Challenger. And then we just said, "Hey, this is cool."
Yeah.
And so
away you went.
And away we went.
Yeah. So give me some highlights of your the art that you've collected.
Oh,
because there's so many. I know. Just start thinking about and just go down the list.
You asked me if I had a favorite artist, and it's probably the last piece I bought. But they're all my favorites, really, because we have never sold a piece of art that we have collected.
Well, you're when I think about your collections, it seems eclectic, like Blue Rain Gallery. You do a little bit of everything. A little bit of everything.
Yeah, we have pots, we have paintings, we have sculptures, beadwork and quill work and war clubs and jewelry.
The whole enchilada.
Yeah, we just love it all, and I think the greatest pride that we have is really the relationships that we've developed with the artists and the galleries, and with you and Peter and your staff and many galleries in town. And, the artists are just, it's a very humbling experience once you understand how artists truly struggle.
Yeah.
There's a few that that hit this pinnacle. But they do it for the love of what they do. They do it to pay the bills and put food on the table. And we focused on trying to really collect from living artists and new artists that are up and coming, because we know that it helps. It helps us all. I mean, the enjoyment that we get out of it is.
Well, I always, I did a podcast way back, and we talked about the passion to create. You can't go to an artist like Paul Plitt or Tony Beta and say, "Stop painting." It's not in them. They're going to paint. I mean, Paul has had serious back problems, and he still paints. It'd be easy for him to say, "I'm retired" at this point, but he's still at it. And what parallels that, though, is also the passion to collect. And you have that. And then you have a trifecta because you're an artist yourself, which we'll talk about. Tell me about them. So when I first met you, you had a little condo not too far from the gallery. And then you found a place down in Tsuki area. Tell me about your journey as far as developing your home here in Santa Fe. Because that's a special place.
It is.
But there's a sign on the front. What does it say?
It says, "Welcome to Indian Country."
Right. So, okay, tell me about the whole concept, how you did this.
So you mentioned about my artistry, which is really writing.
Yes.
And as in writing, this project, this property, which we were honored to get, and that's another story, but it's a good one, and it needed lots of care. But when we got there, we just felt this amazing energy, so once we got there, we started to clean the property up, and then the very first thing that I installed out there was, and I didn't realize this at the time, was a big turtle planter that was made out of stone, and we grew strawberries in his feet, and then in his back we had Pueblo corn, and you can see it from Google Earth. It's cool. You can see this turtle, and then from there everything just started to kind of come together and evolve, and we built we installed a teepee, and then I found this amazing white buffalo by Kevin Box that's there, and I had this Americana art, this 11-foot tall iron warrior that sets up on some rocks, and then as we moved to the back, we started finding all this cool stuff, and obviously Pueblo art. At the top where we had the acequia.
Acequia means ditch.
A ditch, yeah. And so I had this big flat spot up there that I wanted to put a labyrinth, and Jeremy Medlock's wife, Autumn, who's a Santa Clara potter and Tammy Garcia's sister, he told her about it. He was trying to look on the computer on how to build that out of stone, because he just did all this beautiful stone.
He did a great job over there.
He got the vision.
Yeah.
And then Autumn came back and with a drawing of an avenue, and said, "I think Marshall needs an avenue here with all this water around." And I said, "Can we do that?" And she said, "If he likes it, I will ask for permission to." Whoever she asked, she said, "We can do that." And so we put this avenue down, and it's an amazing.
It's beautiful.
It's hard to describe. Right. It's just very powerful. And I go out there sometimes for meditation, and I close my eyes and I try, and it goes in a circular from his tail all the way to his head out with the lightning bolts. And I call it walking the snake.
Yeah.
And I do, and it's a great spiritual moment. So we've really, after all this got completed, and with all the installation of all the outdoor art, I realized that it really wasn't so much my vision as I think the property guided me, and the spirits. We know that the spirits are solid that live there. And it really became an honoring of Indian country.
Yeah.
And that's that's how I describe it, and that's really the final installation was that rock.
Was that rock? Mm-hmm.
And it has a quote that I took from a dinner with my chief, Chief Enoch Kelly Haney, who gave this wonderful speech, and I took some of his words and inscribed a quote on the rock and dedicated it to him. And that was the final installation, which is then.
Well, it's a beautiful property, and you have water features in there.
Yeah, I have a 70-foot waterfall, and
you have a Goodacre exhibit in
Yeah.
there. I mean,
Yeah.
it's beautiful. You have a lot of beautiful Tanner Garcia sculptures.
Yeah, rain messengers and transcendence, and
Yeah.
it's
beautiful. And so, tell me about your man cave.
So the man cave, it's really the man cava. It resembles a kiva. Not we in Pueblo. I don't feel we should call it a kiva. And so Kenneth Johnson, he says, we're going to call it the man cava, Marshall. And so Tim Starr built this fantastic building out back, this 2-story building, which has a writing studio upstairs. And underneath is this man cava that is 3/4 underground. And Roxanne Swinzel did all of the plaster work in their hand.
She's amazing, huh?
They mixed the straw and the sand right there on their property, and she did all this amazing natural plaster work inside. And there's been a lot of people over the years, because we have this big annual barbecue where we invite all our artist friends and gallery people and other friends, and we usually have 100 to 120 people, and we just completed our 9th barbecue. So when we opened the whole property. And this year was no exception. It was a beautiful moment. So
yeah, I saw the pictures. They were beautiful. Normally, I go to those. This year, I was just too burnt out.
Yeah,
I've done like 3 weeks without a day off.
Your daughter represented very well.
Thank you, Leah. Well, that's pretty cool. So let's talk about your creativity. I follow Marshall on Facebook, and I swear this man every day writes something new. And I don't know where you have the time and the energy to do that, but they're very creative. So tell me a little bit about your art form and what you write.
I've been writing since I was a little kid, stuff, and not all the time. I didn't really embrace it, but for some reason I would just write. As I got older, things would come to me, and I would feel compelled to write. You mentioned that Paul Pletka and Tony, you can't tell them not to paint; they have to paint, and I wrote a story called The Poet One, and it's he has to write. It's a gift and a disease. It's like art collecting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I call it a disease because it's hard to. It's like getting tattoos. Once you get one, you got to have two.
Right.
And then, but the writing is as inspirational as if I try to sit down and write something, it doesn't work out. I have to let something hit me, a moment, a word. And I actually wrote something this morning because I've been busy all week with Indian Market and stuff. And so I wrote something this morning and I thought of you when I did, because you said you wanted to talk about that. So
do you have it memorized?
I don't, but I have it on my phone that's where I do all my writing.
I think we should get to that. But before that, one of these barbecues that you've talked about, I attended, and you had one of your writings collaborated with the song, right? With a musician.
Oh yeah, right, sure.
Who was that?
Oh, Scott Van Zen.
Mm-hmm.
I've written lots of songs with him and collaborated, and he's got a rock and roll EP coming out that we wrote together.
Oh, nice.
And,
Is that the only one you've collaborated with in music?
No, another guy named Mike Fleener. We've wrote lots of songs. Who Scott, we're best friends in Nashville. I traveled to write songs with them, and we did some country songs and also a guy named Kent Blasey. I was fortunate to have a couple of songs that came out that got written with him, and he's wrote like 5 number ones with Garth Brooks. So he's
so he knows
and a very beautiful soul, you know, and so I've been fortunate to just do stuff that I'd never dreamed it would be possible.
Well, that was a memorable moment at your barbecue, listening to your words in song, and very impactful. And I appreciate you sharing that. Let's read what you wrote this morning.
All right. So I come from lots of places. You know, I've had a light journey. I've had a dark journey, and writing, like, I think all things come from experiences in life. And somebody asked me one time, is that all you? And I said, well, there's parts of me probably in all of it.
Yeah.
You know, and but I try to present a healing message and maybe something someone can get out of. And so, what I wrote this morning is called, Grateful for Granted. And it goes like this. I had it all, just like in the dance. I had it right in my palm. You couldn't be better. Took me higher than heaven. The love in your eyes made me feel so alive. Yeah, I had it. But then I took grateful for granted. Flying too high and trying to land it. And I'm sorry, leaving you stranded was not how I planned it. But now I'm understanding how I just handed him over to you. Yeah, I took grateful for granted, like I had nothing to lose. The voices I hear, the beat of my heart, says let go all the fear. In the end, I need more, unsatisfied, knocking at my door. I just knew you'd stay, but it all slipped away. Yeah, I had it. The simple pleasures, unnamed and unknown, I sit alone with all the things I had to own and all the things I didn't know I couldn't hold. Yeah, I had it. But then I took grateful for granted, flying too high and trying to land it. And I'm sorry, leaving you stranded was not how I planned it. But now I'm understanding how I just handed him over to you. Yeah, I took grateful for granted, like I had nothing to lose.
Nice. You know, I'll say this about my friend Marshall. Both of us have gone through dark days and shiny days. And but as I've seen Marshall mature way faster than me, he's been a very solid person and somebody that I admire and listen to. And thank you for sharing everything that you have with me in my life and with my gallery and all these beautiful artists. Thank you for coming to the studio today.
Yeah, thank you, Leroy.
Yeah.
It's been an honor of mine to learn from you as well, and I'm proud of what you've achieved as well. I know your journey, and we all have those. Yes. And the light is always better.
It does. It always gets better as we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Mostly.
Just stay in the light, brother.
Well, I'd like to thank you for coming in today, Marshall. Really appreciate it. I'd like to encourage our audience to subscribe to our podcasts through all the platforms, Spotify, iTunes, etc. And if you're not familiar with that, you can always go to blueraingallery.com under podcasts and view those beautiful moments that we have like today. Also, I'd like to encourage people to bring art into their everyday life by going to bluerainprintshop.com. Thank you again, Marshall.
Thank you, Leroy.
See you next time.
All right, buddy. See you.
Hey, 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 hey,